Hi, Mike, and welcome back to Entrepreneurcast. It's so great to have you back on the show.
It's lovely to be back, Svietlana. And how are you today? Well,
it's really hot here today. How is it at your end of the planet?
I'm in Florida today, so it's about 33 degrees and 100% humidity.
Oh,
So
wow.
after I talk to you, I'm going to the pool.
Fantastic. So, Mike, before we started our conversation today, before we started the episode, you asked me this question of what do I think is the problem out there in the world? And it was more like, in the business or even in the world. And I said to you that there are too many wars. The whole world goes to hell, people, kids, the next generation, nobody knows where they're going. And we probably can't really solve that problem right now. But what we can talk about and probably help somebody sort out, especially the listener, is sort out the conflict between the people in the everyday lives, everyday business, and basically the everyday problems.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we probably can't solve war on this program, although we'd like to. But I think it's representative. Conflict is representative of what happens on a day-to-day basis. And probably some of your listeners have been in conflict today. And it comes back to this whole topic of conscious personal leadership and personal accountability. So one of the biggest problems, as you know, with conflict and where it blows out of control is that there's a miscommunication in place. And that miscommunication is sort of like a pimple, right? If you don't pop it straight away, then it's, going to get uglier and uglier as time goes on. So there are ways in which you can learn to communicate better. So I'll stop just there and I'll ask you to repeat back to me what I just said.
You said that the conflict is like a pimple. If you don't get rid of it straight away, then it gets worse and worse and worse.
Right. So what I said was, okay. So what I said was, I said that the conflict between relationships happens every day, and some of our listeners may have even experienced that today. And I said it's weird because it's sort of like a pimple, because if you don't treat it and pop it straight away, then what happens is it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, becomes really ugly and gets out of control. Yeah. So tell me what I said again. No, I'm kidding around. But I won't do this to you. But the reason why this is good is because Lundy Jack, my partner, had to go through this with her dad as a child. And it made her an excellent communicator. Her dad used to say to her, tell me what I said. And basically, if he would say that you have to tell somebody 2.5 times before they could actually tell you back what it was that they said, right? And this happens in business all the time. So I'm using this as a great example because you're really present at the moment, okay? Because you're hosting the show, so your focus is here, right? You're not thinking about, what you're going to have for dinner or what's happening later on. Your focus is here because you're controlling this space. So even with your focus here, therefore, you've got a fairly accurate take on what I'm saying. But if you and I were working together and we're having a coffee and I'm asking you to do something, I'm probably going to assume, because it's the way it is, that you're going to listen to less than about 25% of it. So therefore, you may not do it the way in which I want it done, which means that it's going to create conflict. So let's take outsourcing as an example of this, right? So again, this is something that Lundy taught me. So this is her genius, not mine. But when she writes an outsourcing document for Fiverr or for Upwork or something like that, and she wants something done, at the end of the brief, she writes, once you've read this brief, please reply back to me with the word pirate in the headline. Now, 2 out of 10 people will reply with pirate in the headline, meaning 8 out of 10 haven't read the brief. Wow. So therefore, they're not going to deliver what you want. So it's not their fault. It's your fault because you picked the wrong person because you didn't make sure that they understood the brief. So you're going to have conflict with that person thinking that they're a jackass because they haven't delivered what you want. But in fact, the problem lies with you because you haven't communicated and made them understand what it is that you wanted. And this is what happens. So this is the whole concept of being conscious. People are so easy to go, it's their fault, they did this wrong. And you hear this all of the time. Just watch Jerry Springer. You'll get the two sides of the coin. He slept with my best friend. And then you find out from, him, it's an entirely different story, right? So this is about this communication thing. And this is where we can actually add some real value for your listening audience. So I want to give you 3 practical ways to really help you improve your communication, folks. So number 1 will be asking somebody to repeat back to you what you said if you gave a verbal instruction. And if they don't get it right, don't go, you didn't get it right. Go say, that's not quite right. Let me share it with you again. Okay? And then share it a second time. And then say, tell me again what it was. Right. Okay. Now, it may seem a little awkward, but it's a lot less awkward than getting something wrong, having it cost you tens of thousands of dollars or maybe more, and having a conflict situation. Number 2 is if you write a brief, whether it be internally in your company or externally for outsourcing, ask them to reply back. Maybe if you don't want to put the word pirate, because now that's a trademark Lundy Jack word, right? But if you ask them to reply back and say, what are the top 3 things that I have asked you to do in this brief and by when, right? So that way you're going to make sure that they understand the communication. And number 3 is to communicate back with them during a process to make sure that they're on track with it and not think that just because you've delegated it, that it's going to get done the way in which you want it to happen. So I'll give you an example of that. Would you like an example?
Yes, please.
So we have the Conscious Leadership Movement on Facebook, right? Anybody can find it there, Conscious Leadership Movement. It's something new that we've started. It's getting a lot of traction. We've got a lot of phenomenal people joining it from all over the world. We have somebody who sources some pictures for us to put with our various posts on there. And so today I see a post go up on there and it's not at the standard that we would want. So what do? I immediately delete the posts, and then I went back to the person and I said to, you haven't got the post right. This is not at the quality the picture quality is not at the quality we would want here, right? And she came back and said, sorry about that. I did it today on my phone and it looked good on my phone, right? So here's the thing is that from a conscious communication point of view, firstly, taking action, which is making sure that your clients are okay by removing something that's not at your standard immediately. Secondly, finding out what the problem is. And thirdly, once I found that out, we were able to say, well, we won't do any more posts from our phone because we can't check to make sure the pictures look good. So we'll have to do them off a laptop or something like that. And then secondly, from that is that we're able to refer her back to the whole briefing on how to create and make these pictures for that, which she actually hadn't read in some time. So from that, she's now going back to the thing and rereading it again. So there's no conflict here. There's training and education.
Mm. Well, to be honest, the stuff you said with the pirate, that was like genius to me because I came across same issue, and I think it was in the Fiverr. I was trying to create this icon for the new project, and several people I've written to didn't read it properly, and I kept going back to them saying that you didn't read what I said, and they still replied in a very weird way. So I understood they still didn't read it. So I think this way, like asking people to repeat or to say something in the end of the sentence, for example, or when you talk to them, I understand that, yeah, it can be sometimes awkward in one-to-one, because if you start talking to people and asking them all the time, can you repeat what I said? It can get a bit weird and awkward, probably, but yeah, it probably will save you a lot of miscommunication.
Yeah, absolutely. But what's weird and awkward is not getting what you want, and then having to tell somebody you don't want to pay them for it, or even worse, it costing you money. So I would really highlight to people to do this most definitely. And the other thing is, what's really important in communication from a conscious perspective is debriefing. So once the project's done, so for instance, if you're outsourcing this, to actually get to a debriefing situation at the end, so it's been delivered back. How did you enjoy my project? Did I communicate the brief well enough for you? Did I give you the right time to do this sort of work? Are you interested in working with me again? And would you like some feedback yourself on how I experienced you? Right. So not just putting a 4 or 5 stars, clicking that on Fiverr, but actually getting into a bit of an offline discussion with them. The other thing that I find is really useful is I tend to be a better speaker than I am a writer of briefs. So I'll audio record my brief. And I find that works better. So it might be, because then people also get to hear like my personality and everything. So it might be, hi Svietlana, it's Mike here. Look, I'm really excited for you to be designing my brochure, for instance, and something like that. I want to tell you the 3 things that I'm really particular about, okay? I'm really particular about my logo and my brand colors. My brand colors are EC008C, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's number 1. Number 2 is I'm really particular about high quality resolution photos that are inspiring and the people on them look like they're having an amazing time. Number 2. Number 3, I'm really particular that we don't use negative words in the copy like blah, 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 and blah. Apart from that, I'd love to give you free license to create whatever you want. And I look forward to having it back in the next 36 hours as you promised, right?
Mm.
See how that brief can then be, that's really an articulate brief rather than having something that's sort of maybe because you can't be bothered typing or something like that, or you don't quite know how to express it. It seems too many words. But in a minute's brief, I can brief fairly clearly. So that can be another way of doing that.
That is a very good tip, because even out of personal relationships, I'll give you an example with my mom and her fiance. She says that very often when he messages, he eats half of the words and he thinks he's written that because his mind goes so fast that he doesn't realize that he didn't say something. And then he thinks he did, but he didn't. So like, I think, recording it, sending it is a much better way, so yeah.
Particularly if somebody's in a second language as well, you've got to make it easy for them. Just because English is my first language, it doesn't mean to say if I'm dealing with somebody who English is their second language, that I have, the right to think that they understand it in the same way I do.
Well, thank you so much for today's tips, Mike. It's been incredible. Really good fun. I think there are a lot of nuggets which people can go and implement straight away in their everyday lives. And I think that's the greatest thing of all. So
bye, Svietlana.
Thank you for coming on the show, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.